Hi everybody and welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your faithful host James, and I'm delighted to have a new guest today, Mr. William Henry. William's been on the cards for a show for us for a time now, and sorry I didn't get in touch with William last year. There was a few things I wanted to talk about, but I have him here today, start of the new year. Really excited about today's guest. What an enigmatic researcher and author he is. Internationally renowned as an investigative mythologist, famed for the Ancient Aliens TV show as well, making great appearances regularly on that. He's authored some 16 books now, numerous DVD programs. So much diverse research. William's into ancient Egypt, Ark of the Covenant, spirituality, ascension, like I learned today, the Turin Shroud, which we're going to mention as well, and his latest book, The Watchers. We're going to get into that as well. Stargates. I mean, this guy has it all, and what a prolific research he does. This guy knows his stuff. So without further ado, let's bring on today's guest. Hi, William. Welcome to the show.
Hi, James. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here finally, William. And so many people have referred me to do the show, and you have been on the cards, but I have you here now. William, you've got quite a diverse background in research. I guess the core body or reason for what you do, I prefer to say, is spiritual seeking, spiritual attainment, transformation, ascension. It's all down to spirituality with you, William. Is that correct?
It is. I started researching heavily in the ancient alien, ancient astronaut area back in 1991, and it became very clear right off the bat that very often when you would hear or read these tales of extraterrestrial beings or celestial beings coming to Earth and influencing human affairs, that they seemed to have an agenda. And to me, that agenda focused on transferring sacred knowledge, spiritual knowledge about human transformation into celestial beings. So very early on, I started on this path or track of following the mystery traditions that tell us, hey, we're in a cocoon type form here, a pupal phase, and we're all in the process here of morphing into our next level of manifestation. And these teachings that will help us do that are out there and available.
Oh, wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about Ancient Aliens first, I suppose. I mean, what a successful... how many seasons is it? 7 now?
7 seasons and getting ready to go into the 8th season.
Wow. And you've been on quite a few episodes, if not a majority. You're one of the main players there, William.
I've been in, the past 4 years, I've been in every episode as far as I can tell. I started... with one of my bits of research having to do with the U.S. Capitol. They did a segment on that. I went up to Washington, D.C. and walked around the Capitol with them and showed them some things. And after that, I became more of a regular talking head on the show, and that evolved into providing research and stories for the show. They've probably done 8 or 10 episodes based on articles from my website or my books and other materials.
Mm-hmm. What is it about Ancient Aliens that's captivated the audience? Captivated the attention of the public?
Initially, I think it was their open-endedness. They asked questions as opposed to going at it strictly documentary style and trying to hammer in a point of view. Plus, they gave the presenters the opportunity to view or voice their research without fear of somebody playing the old wolf in sheep's clothing game. I mean, many of the presenters on the show, including myself, had sat down and done interviews for some of the major channels, and they'll very often send Goldilocks or this really nice presenter to ask you the questions. Meanwhile, the wolf is sitting back at the studio smacking his lips saying, I can't wait to get a hold of what I just had this guy say. And so there was a real trust factor there for presenters where they simply didn't want to play ball with some of these folks. But Ancient Aliens said, hey, let's rip the lid off. Let's just go for it here. And let's take people on a journey and let them decide for themselves how far they want to stretch this.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, it is such a wonderful subject. I mean, whether you're from the archaeological crowd or the historical crowd or the spiritual crowd, or, it seems to bind everything together. I mean, let's talk about some of your work. I'm going to get into The Watchers. I'll save that for a moment, your latest book. But, the Anunnaki, you've researched this. The ancient Egypt, you're a big player there with research too, William. I mean, What's your opinion of the ancient alien hypothesis that we had flesh and blood aliens coming here, maybe interdimensional as well?
Yeah, I think we've had here in the States, we have a ketchup called Heinz 57 or 57 varieties. And I think that's what we've got in the ancient alien scenario. You've got everything from the beings who are just only maybe 100 years in advance of where we're at right now, putting around the cosmos, perhaps in warp drive, warp craft. Then you've got the super advanced beings who have gone completely organic. They're post-biological. They travel the stars in stargates, wormholes. They have the ability to take on physical manifestation at will and then morph back into their light body form also at will. So it's across the board really. And if you're into heavy stones, there's some real heavy lifting you can do in this research, going back and figuring out how did they build the pyramids? How did they move those 500 and 600 ton red granite blocks into places if they're moving around Lego blocks? You can also find the stories of them performing superhuman feats and morphing into light beings. And this is what makes it so exciting. And ultimately, to me, it's all about answering the question of who are we? What are we doing here? And ultimately, how do we leave? And where do we go when it's our time to leave?
I think you're right. I think there's this kind of technical, advanced, high-tech science that these guys had, and inevitably leads you into this supernatural element where the light body these guys were angelic in a sense. And maybe we could talk a little bit about that for a moment, William. What is the light body? What is the light energy? What is it made of? How does it work? How does it function? What's the benefit of this to see this, to know this?
Well, here's the idea. You have this vast spectrum of consciousness out there and spectrum of energies. We occupy a very, very narrow spectrum. And the idea is that we can transform our physical body by accelerating the frequency of the body, according to the Tibetans. We can spin our body into a vortex of energy that ultimately manifests as 5-colored rainbow light, or what they call the rainbow body of light, leaving behind only hair, toe, and fingernails, which have no nerves to be transmuted. This is the Tibetan teaching. And what I've done is I've found this very same teaching in ancient Egyptian resurrection mysteries and in Christian resurrection mysteries. They all seem to be talking about this same capability that we have of morphing the body, dissolving the body into its next form. And the advantage of that is that it is in this form, this light body form, that we will then be able to travel the cosmos. It seems that there is a barrier separating flesh and blood from the cosmos. Even the Bible says that flesh and blood can't inherit the kingdom of heaven. And that suggests to many people that we're going to have to change our form in order to get past this perceived boundary and travel the stars. And I think that's where we're at right now, is we're starting to maybe perhaps recognize there could well be a glass ceiling that's keeping us solar system bound. I mean, we're starting to make efforts to develop our own warp craft. Johnson Space Center has the 100-year Starship program down at their Eagle Works lab, where they're saying within 100 years, we're going to have a warp craft and be able to travel from here to Alpha Centauri in less than 2 weeks, a journey that right now would take 75,000 years in a spaceship or starship. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, unless we start getting serious about our technology with the concerted efforts for space travel, we ain't going anywhere. I know that.
Well, my sense is that when you look at I have an article on this on my website, williamhenry.net, about the 100-year Starship program and the symbolism that they use to first of all represent their project, the eagle going through, or a warp craft going through a wormhole with an eagle attached to it. You find similar imagery, an eagle or a bird, an open gateway, in ancient Sumerian cylinder seals and Babylonian cylinder seals. And these cartoons are all telling the same story. Humankind has the ability to open these gateways and travel the cosmos. But what the ancients kept emphasizing to me was that, and the message I would give to Johnson Space Center, is that in order to kick in that warp drive, we're first going to have to kick in the spiritual drive. And there's a consciousness component to this. It's going to require a transformation of the human body into another form, not of flesh and blood form, in order for us to travel the stars. At least that's the contention of the ancients.
This is quite powerful what we're talking about. This is amazing for me to just even have a discussion about this. When you think of the possibilities of what this is everything to us as a civilization. This is where we need to go.
Well, you're right. I mean, the doomsday clock is at 3 minutes to midnight right now. It was just pushed forward. It was pushed forward because of climate change, because of IT security concerns, because of nuclear proliferation, and now they've added artificial intelligence. Those are the key factors that could lead to our extinction within not decades, but years. This is why they pushed the doomsday clock forward. So this is compelling us to say, hey, we got to get our act together. If we've got these factors that could lead to some kind of an extinction level event, we've got to do something about this. And that means, to me, we've got to start taking a more spiritual approach to our life and our approach to humanity in general.
I know you talk about this singularity clock. Maybe you could just explain that one for us, please, William.
Well, what is happening is that there's this rapid acceleration of technology where suddenly we have governments, U.S. government, and its secretive advanced research projects agencies and others promoting a new version of humanity, a smart human, a smart digital person. And what this means is the smart person's going to have implanted chips. The smart person's going to have a new skin that is presently under development for humanity that has all the computer and digital technology enmeshed or embedded within it. I call this the skingularity, and this is the moment when mass people begin to accept this idea that if they want to stay current, stay healthy, stay competitive, they're going to have to mesh their flesh with technology developed by Apple, Google, Samsung, Cisco, and all these other digerati or Silicon Valley tech companies that are right now merging 4 key technologies: genetic technology, neuroscience, nanotechnology, and computer science, all into one seamless technology, all aimed at the human skin and the development of a new skin for humanity.
Is there a chance of a doomsday? I mean, how close are we going to get? Do you think I think a lot of fear out there, definitely, Henry. I think there's a lot of chance of a doomsday. I think the human race will pull it back. I think we'll get close. We'll probably wait till the 1 minute to 12.
Well, this is why we have to raise the awareness, right, James? I mean, because we've pushed it now to 3 minutes. It was 4 minutes until just a couple of weeks ago. So things are shifting, and now it's time for people to start paying attention, because we definitely, I don't think, want to get to 1 minute to midnight, because at that point, it could well be too late. I mean, what we have to do, I feel, is get people to recognize the stakes of our present decisions, and people need to start participating, and they need to start, as they are doing. In fact, they are starting to march in various cities, like what happened in Paris when the people put their foot down and say, "Yes, we, Charlie." They're not having it anymore, and that's what has to happen. I'm not suggesting people storm Silicon Valley or go to Apple's new Stargate-looking corporate headquarters they're building and say, "Hey, don't aim at the skin," but it's almost going to take something like that. And I will tell you some good news on the skingularity. Google, who are now publicly stated they are actually in the immortality business and human longevity business, were advocating a new technology they called glass. When people put on glass, it was a pair of glasses that would keep them wired to the internet, and it would enable them to videotape and audio record everything that they see. And there was a real backlash against this. In fact, people started calling those who wear glass holes, because they were so obnoxious, not only obnoxious looking, but who wants to have their every conversation recorded and put up on Facebook or whatever? Well, the good news here is that Google has backburnered glass. They pulled it back and said, okay, this product was, for the consumer market right now, was a failure. And what that has done is given us sort of a breather here for these companies to say, well, wait a minute, maybe there is going to be a backlash. The power to the people are going to say, wait a minute, I'd rather just keep my cell phone in my hand, thank you. I don't want it in my skin, and nor do I want to wear glass, and no thank you to that implanted contact lens that you're telling me is going to replace glass anyway.
Wow, fascinating. Let's talk religion for a moment, William. The ISIS partnership and other fanatical Muslims, Jews, Christians. I mean, religion's it's a boiling point at the moment. I think everybody wants to see the Messiah come and save the day. I mean, is people going to just sit back and wait for something like this to happen?
Well, they're not just sitting back is the thing. I mean, has there ever been a time in history when both the radical Muslims and evangelical Christians are in agreement that the end of days is imminent, if not here? I mean, we're talking about the neocons in America, the Bush-Cheney axis of people who were reading the book of Revelation like a cookbook and saying, oh, okay, we have to rebuild Babylon in order for it to be destroyed because that's what the Bible says is going to happen before the Lord returns. So what do? We go into Iraq and we take control of Babylon. And now you've got on the Islamic side the people saying, oh, the cookbook says, Muhammad said that before the end of days, the judgment day, there's going to be a battle at a place called Dubik in Syria. Let's go for it. And they did. So these people read these prophetic texts almost like they're blueprints, and they're all aimed at ultimately bringing in their particular brand of Messiah. But what most people don't realize about this, James, is that the prophecies of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are intertwined. The players are the same. For example, in Islam, they're awaiting, and ISIS is a proponent of the imminent arrival of their messianic figure they call the Mahdi. He's called the Mahdi because he will be the guided one by Allah to recover the Ark of the Covenant and return it to Jerusalem. Well, Islamic prophecy says he is assisted by Jesus, who becomes his ally. And so you've got the evangelical Christians rooting for the return of Jesus, but so are the radical Muslims, because they believe that their version of Jesus is going to help them get the Ark of the Covenant, return it to Jerusalem, which of course the Jews are not going to allow. That's going to be a trigger of an Armageddon type of scenario, because they will not allow the return of the Ark of the Covenant by anyone other than themselves.
Wow. Well, for me, one of the biggest mysteries on this planet is the Ark of the Covenant. What a fascinating piece of research to get into. I mean, the more you read about this, the more you research and there's a variety of sources. I've had Graham Hancock on the show. I never got to talk to him about the Ark of the Covenant, and I know he concentrates on Ethiopia. However, tell me about what you believe the Ark of the Covenant to be, William. You talk about a decoy as well. I know you don't really concentrate a lot on the Ethiopian angle either. I mean, there's more to it than that.
There is. It's surprising what is actually known about the Ark of the Covenant. Once you get out of the popular books, and I thought Graham's book was great. I mean, I read it in 1992 or something like that. Got it as a Christmas present. Awesome book, The Sign and the Seal. And then when you get deep into Ark of the Covenant research, you immediately realize, at least according to the Bible, that there are two takes on what the Ark is. Yeah, you can focus on it as the golden box made by the Israelite artisan Bezalel per a blueprint provided by Moses. But then what you realize is that this figure, Bezalel, was also downloaded, if you will, all the wisdom of the universe by God in order to make that box. Now, why does God need to download all the wisdom of the universe to this artisan, this craftsman, just to make a simple golden box? The answer is he doesn't. And the reason why is because that's not what the Ark of the Covenant is. It is not a simple golden box. That's the decoy. What most Ark researchers don't connect with is the consciousness that's implied in this, that they in fact could make these shamans, if you will, these Israelite holy men, the high priests, could make a version of the Ark of the Covenant within their own body. And what they knew is that the Ark of the Covenant is a kit of tools. When you open the Ark and you look inside, it contains several tools or implements, including the rod of enlightenment, or the rod of Aaron, Moses' brother, the flask of manna, which is the star food or holy food, the anointing oil that dissolves the body into a rainbow-colored light, or the rainbow body of light on contact. This is a kit of tools that gets assembled. The other component, of course, are the two tablets of the Ten Commandments. And when you assemble that kit of tools, you take the rod and you put it on top of the ark and put the tablets on top, it forms a complete device that is exactly the same as the throne of Osiris in ancient Egypt, and also the throne of Buddha. So we're talking about a device here that is known in various spiritual traditions, including Christianity, where now this completed or fully assembled device becomes what's known as the throne of Christ. This is the complete, fully assembled Ark of the Covenant that acts as, in the biblical stories and other texts, acts as a device that opens a portal or gateway through which a luminous, humanoid, rainbow-like figure manifests. And so to me, what the real Ark of the Covenant is not a weapon system, not a battery or a telecommunications device. It's in fact a device that opens portals or gateways.
Wow. This is a spiritual technology then, William. This isn't just technology, it's a spiritual technology.
Exactly, and this is where I kind of differ from some of the other Ark of the Covenant researchers, and it goes back to our conversation about ancient aliens a moment ago. Yeah. I mean, if you're believing that aliens are putting around the universe in tin can spaceships or flying Toyotas, you're not looking for a spiritual component to this. In fact, many ancient alien theorists are emphatic that there is no spiritual component to this whatsoever, which is something I completely disagree with, of course. And it's the same thing with the Ark. If you're thinking of the Ark as a technology that is a weapon or a battery or things like that, you're not following the innermost understanding of what the Ark is. And what I was most surprised to learn, James, is just how much specialists in Israelite symbolism actually know about the Ark of the Covenant, material that just simply did not make it into the popular books. But that's what I tried to do in my book, The Judgment Day Device, is go to these ivory tower types and find out what they know, which is amazing, and put it into a popular book.
This is the thing for me, and if you want to take the ancient alien hypothesis back to Sumerian, and you look at the Anunnaki, what they talk about is the spiritual technology as well. There's always an incarnation, the worker race, whatever way you want to look at this whole ancient alien hypothesis with respect to the Anunnaki, there's a spiritual element to it there too.
I agree, and that was early on when I read Zecharia Sitchin's book, The 12th Planet and the Wars Between Gods and Men, back in 1991, 1992. And Sitchin, basically, we now know for sure, I mean, that he actually made up the whole idea that the Anunnaki came here for gold. In fact, when you go back and reread his books, Sitchin is pretty clear that he just is surmising this. There is no Sumerian text that says the Anunnaki came here to mine gold and created us as a slave race to mine gold. That's pure imagination for Zecharia Sitchin. He could have said they came here for McVitie's digestive biscuits, and it would be equally valid. Okay? So there's got to be another reason that they came here. And what tipped me off was that Sitchin maintained that Enki, this Anunnaki astronaut who is responsible for retooling human DNA, he corresponds with the Egyptian god Ptah, that he was also the god of alchemy. And I read that and I thought, well, wait a minute, why does an alchemist need to come clear across the solar system or clear across the galaxy to mine gold? Why doesn't he just transmute a hunk of space rock and call it a day? So thinking along those lines of alchemy, it posed a question, and that was, we know that what alchemists are really interested in is not purifying impure metals into gold, but rather purifying their souls or their consciousness into a purer form. So with that, I wondered, what if it's possible that the Anunnaki came here not for gold, but rather for souls, on a mission to perhaps rescue souls? And if that's the case, what if their retooling of human DNA had to do something with the soul? Like, for instance, making the human body a more conducive vehicle for the ascension of the soul. For whatever reason, it appears our divine spark, our soul, needs a ladder or stairway to heaven in order to ascend. And it appears that it's our human body. That's the function, the spiritual function of our body, is to act as this conduit to the divine cosmos.
Wow, what an interesting discussion, William. This is the thing for me now. This is where I think we're predisposed to. Let's say, for example, William, we're a technological race and we're getting very advanced with our science and our telescopes and our laboratories and all our physics. And do you not think that we're, in a scientific sense, we're predisposed to go down the biological or biotechnical route to start playing with genetics and DNA, and as opposed to that, then we're going down to that predisposed route of playing God and playing with incarnation and playing with this spiritual technology? Do you not think that's where any technological race would head?
Yeah, absolutely. Because at some point, it's about longevity. I mean, you've got a body, and it's thought of as being fragile. It's also malleable. It can be transformed, but you're charged ultimately, once you take care of your basic needs, with trying to live as long as you can. And I think that's a basic motivating factor of life probably anywhere in the universe is to live. Mm-hmm. And so here you are with beings. In the case of the Anunnaki, people talk in terms of extreme lifespans. They would live for tens of thousands of years. How did they do that? Did they jump from body to body? Did they have some way of preserving their bodies for a very long time? I don't know, but what I do know is that we are in that exact place right now. We are right now capable of doing everything that we presume the Anunnaki were capable of doing. Mm-hmm. Putting around our local star system here, making it to the moon, Mars. Soon we'll be able to go beyond. We've got advanced genetics technology where we're able to tweak our own DNA. We're beginning to develop artificial intelligence. These are all of the things that one thinks that perhaps the Anunnaki had the capability of doing. And so that means that we have reached their level of advancement. Now, I think when you go back to those Anunnaki tales, that some of them are morality tales, and they warn about getting too carried away. They warn about playing God. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something we need to get back to understand the real root of those stories. Something
where we're at today as well. There's a morality code, playing with genetics as well.
Exactly. I mean, we literally are playing God with these new technologies in our hands, the genetic technology, nanotechnology, computer science, and brain science. And the thing about it is that those are technologies that are in our hands, but to me they're sort of new versions of what we used to call earth, air, fire, and water, the four elements of which our body is composed. Mm-hmm. And so if we think of genes, bits, neurons, and atoms as digital versions or new versions of the same old elements, then what we have to recognize is that what the ancients knew is that those four elements have to be mediated by the fifth element, which is spirit or soul. And that's what's lacking in our discussion about the impending or the ongoing creation of this smart world that's happening all around us, where we've got digital devices by the billions suddenly having cameras in them and sensors that monitor all our activity and are literally taking over the world and creating this smart grid that now each and every one of us is simply a new thing on this smart grid.
Mm-hmm. Let's step over to Egypt for a second, William. I mean, these guys were also, ancient Egypt, these guys were also spiritually advanced. I personally think they had a spiritual technology as well. Maybe it's not as apparent. Maybe we don't. Okay, you can say that the Ark is a spiritual device, it's spiritual technology. I think it was a philosophical, spiritual advancement that these guys had. Incredible. Totally incredible.
Yeah, when you're talking ancient Egypt, that's a prime example of a civilization that is based on the idea of resurrection, of rebirth, renewal, regeneration. I think this is why their god Osiris was the green man, which is symbolic of rebirth, renewal, and regeneration. And here we are today trying to create a green civilization and the green movement, and it's all about recycling and proper utilization of resources. But to me, a true green civilization is one that is based on this idea of rebirth and resurrection. And that's what's so inspiring about the ancient Egyptians to me.
Wow. You got a tour coming up on the Shroud of Turin. I've wanted to do a show on the Shroud of Turin for a while now, William. At least get talking about it. It's a topic I wanted to touch on. Of course, the listeners can go to williamhenry.net and check it out there. Tell us about the upcoming tour. Tell me what you think about the Shroud of Turin. I find it totally fascinating. I know the research still, we could do probably more on it. I mean, it's an incredible artifact.
Well, yeah, and I not to disagree with you, James, but because I too am completely just locked on to the Shroud of Turin as like the North Star. I mean, if we're wondering what to do with our lives, duplicate what happened with the Shroud of Turin. Sure. As long as you're following that path, you're going to be just fine, right? Sure. But the fact of the matter is, to me, is that the Shroud of Turin is not technically an artifact, nor is it a relic, although these terms are often applied to the shroud. Yeah. The church in the past, the Catholic Church in the past 10 years or so, beginning with statements by Cardinal Ratzinger before he was Pope, and then more recently Pope Francis, they have been using the word icon in relation to the shroud. The shroud is an icon of Christ. That is an incredibly important term because in Christian speak, at least in Christian arcanum, the word icon refers to a sacred object that has especially a painting, that has the capability of transmitting holiness. It is in fact viewed as a sacred mirror and a portal, as well as a two-way communications link between the earthly realm and the divine realm. Wow. So that tells me that the shroud is in fact a living thing. And perhaps what researchers have said is true, that the shroud represents the record of the dematerialization into a radiant being of light of Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth, whatever term you choose to call this person by. And it is in fact a message for us that is capable of transmitting this vibration of holiness to us. Now, this isn't just my original idea or hypothesis about the shroud. This, for example, is what the Knights Templar believed about it. Sure. They are believed to have been in possession of the shroud. And according to a Vatican researcher, the Templars wore linen strands around their waist that they would charge by placing them in contact with first the stone of the Holy Sepulchre, upon the stone upon which Jesus' body was transformed into light and then beamed through the shroud. And then later they would simply touch the shroud itself, and the shroud would transmit this vibration of holiness that the Templars considered to be a vibration that would protect them in their earthly life and also ultimately assure their ultimate resurrection. Now, what are we talking about there? We're talking about a living technology, if you will, that transmits this vibration that can transform humans on contact. It's phenomenal.
Wow. You know, I know there's deliberation over the age of it. And for me, I know there was also a fire that may have actually messed up the carbon dating anyway. So I'm not too worried about that.
It's considered the greatest scientific mistake of all time. Yeah. That when they're doing the testing on the shroud, they snipped off a piece of the shroud from when it was repaired in the 13th century and tested that and said, yeah, it's a fraud. But I think, as some people believe, that was an intentional fraud, that they put that out there. Who's ever first there with the message kind of gets an opportunity to control the message. And it seems to me that there's people that don't want to see the shroud absolutely validated and authenticated as an actual icon of Christ's resurrection, because then by definition it would be beaming this holiness to everyone. And if you come into contact with it, as millions will, when they see the shroud, when it goes on display in from April till June of 2015, you could put yourself in a position to receive that vibration of holiness and of the resurrection itself.
Wow. But here's the thing, William, as well. Nobody has any idea how the face of Christ is in that fabric. There is no known method to superimpose that, even with all our technology today.
No, you're right. And I go along with the supposition put forward, or the hypothesis put forward by various researchers, physicists, most notably, that say that this is a record of a dematerialization event, that it was produced by a sudden burst of light that came from within the body of the person covered by the shroud, who is presumed to be Jesus.
No. Of course, the tour is April 24th to May 5th. That sounds a fascinating tour, William. I believe that may be the last time the shroud is on display.
That's what we're told. They have said that they'll put it on display in another 25 years or so, but likely, wow. I think what we're going to see is some advancements in the research, and perhaps an announcement by the church that the shroud is in fact the authentic shroud of Christ, and we probably at that point there will be no more scientific research on it, and I question whether or not it'll be put on display again. Sure. So we decided to build a tour around seeing the shroud. We're very interested in the ascension mysteries of mystic Christianity, and of course, when you're in Rome in the Vatican Museum, and in Florence chasing around the Medicis, and in the museums there, you're right in front of the arcanum of the Renaissance, and in direct connection to the codes and the secrets of resurrection as they understood it.
For sure. Just before we leave the Ark of the Covenant, William, have you looked into the Ark of the Covenant at the Hill of Tara? I know you've wrote a paper on the Hill of Tara. It's where I grew up. I grew up on the foothills of the Hill of Tara, so I do want to give that little mention today. There may be
beautiful place.
Yeah, wonderful place. There may be underground chambers underneath the Hill of Tara. That's the first time I came across your work, William. But do you know about the story of the Ark of the Covenant may have been at the Hill of Tara at one point?
Is that the story about Jeremiah bringing the ark to Ireland?
Sure, and then it may have gone on elsewhere to America, perhaps. People think it may have been hid over there.
Right, and ultimately, I mean, you can chase it all around the world and even off the planet, because now you've got various scholars that are saying that the angels, the Watcher angels, came and took the Ark of the Covenant into the heavenly realms, and then it ultimately will be returned at the time of at the end times, probably by the Watcher angels once again. So, to me, following the ark, the value of it in that way is that you're putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And I do believe that these places like the Hill of Tara are supercharged energy centers. And that if you go to a place like that and can put all your own pieces together, I mean, think about it this way, James. What if the box of the Ark of the Covenant is your lower three chakras? And what if the rod of Aaron, the rod of enlightenment that's placed within the ark, is in fact your spinal cord?
Spinal cord, yeah.
And what if the two tablets of the law, in fact, are the two hemispheres of your brain? And what if the jar of anointing oil that contains the oil that transmutes your body into light, what if that jar is your pineal gland? And what if you go to a place like the Hill of Tara and you can put this kit together within yourself and activate your own inner ark throne? Now you're in a place to bring in the divine energy, call it the Christ energy, the cosmic energy, the Shekinah, the glory, whatever term you want to use. But now you're in a place, your body has become a vessel, or a throne is the term they use for the ark, upon which this divine energy can sit. That to me is what the ark is. It's ultimately our body, and by placing yourself at these various X spots or power spots, you are putting yourself in a position to charge up your body and receive that divine vibration.
Wow. Well, William, I got to start on the book, otherwise I'll be chatting all day. So I do want to give some time for the book today. Lost Secrets of the Watchers, Ascension, Resurrection and Perfection. It looks fantastic, William. I've just got my copy today. It looks beautiful. Lost Secrets of the Watchers, we're talking the Nephilim here, William?
Well, we're talking the ancestors, if you will, of the Nephilim, who are of course the offspring of they're a hybrid race, the Nephilim are, between the Watchers and human females.
Okay, so this is the original source of the Nephilim.
Yeah, exactly. They're referred to as the Holy Ones, the Watchers and the Holy Ones. They came from another worldly realm in the Bible, referred to as Sion, which is the name of the throne of God. It's the ultimate place where humans who have gone through the process of perfection ultimately dwell with all the angels who are gathered in joyful assembly, at least according to the book of Acts and book of Hebrews. And for whatever reason, these Watchers who are described as luminous, rainbow-like beings when they inhabit the throne of God, took it upon themselves to cross over a forbidden barrier, transformed into earthly flesh and blood form, and began teaching the secrets of heaven. And for that, were labeled as subversive and fallen, and ultimately were punished. And a lot of people get fixated on their offspring, the offspring of the Watchers, the Nephilim, as this race of giant beings who are somehow 10, 12 feet tall and so forth. And I mean, that's a possibility. But the research that I did, I asked, well, why were the offspring, the Nephilim, why were they called giants? What made them giant? Were they in fact 10 and 12 feet tall? And actually the answer that I came across was that the Watchers brought with them a spiritual technology that is symbolized by a robe or garment of light. And those humans who are able to put on this garment of light are considered to be giants. And they have giant or superhuman capability. One such figure, his name is Enoch. He's the first translated man. And in a story, he's taken into the heavenly realms by the archangel Michael, who's a Watcher, who anoints him with a holy oil that dissolves Enoch's body into rainbow-colored light. And he's given a new garment after this, which symbolizes his acquisition of these mystic secrets. So my thing became, well, wait a minute. If you're chasing the giants as 10 and 12 footers, and who most certainly, could exist, chances are you're not looking for how to put on that robe or garment of light and become a giant, human being in the sense of being a spiritually advanced or spiritually fulfilled being. So that's what my book is about, is looking for these, what I call the lost resurrection, ascension, and perfection teachings of the Watchers. And it's an amazing study. And if that's your thing, if you want to know the source secrets of the Essenes, which became the mystic Christian movement, this is for you.
The Enochian Bible mentions the Watchers, I believe, at the start. What is it about the Enochian Bible that it was suppressed or it was put aside? It didn't make the canon.
Well, you had, from the period of about 180 BC into the time of Jesus, you had this competing faction of mystics who were putting forward this idea of the Watchers. And actually, some of your ivory tower scholars believe that the Watchers are in fact not fallen angels, and that they're, in the sense that they're extraterrestrials or celestial beings. Rather, the fallen angels to them can be interpreted as the priests of the Temple of Solomon who kind of went off track and were therefore called the fallen ones. So you have this political infighting at this time that these stories are written. So it's possible that the Watchers are in fact the fallen priests. But then at another level, what you're seeing here is that the mystic Jews, the Essenes, who are largely responsible for really popularizing the Watchers and turning Enoch into a new superhero, this translated or resurrected man who became a model later for Jesus. What these Essenes were interested in was this boundary crossing. Because in the Old Testament, the only way you get to heaven is by God's invitation and with God's permission. And the Essenes and other mystics were like going, wait a minute, I think I can do this on my own. And the fallen priests were the ones that said, well, actually, that's heresy. You can't do that. You can't cross over this forbidden boundary until God says you can do so. So what you've got are these rebel priests who are armed with the secrets of the Watchers, the secrets of heaven, the secrets of how humans can become angels, who suddenly start knocking holes in heaven. Today we call those Stargates. And over a period of a couple hundred years, you suddenly get all these, what I call ascension simulation texts that begin to appear in Babylon and in Jerusalem and in Alexandria that tell how humans can transform into celestial beings, open a hole in space-time, and go dwell at the throne of God without God's permission or even God's invitation. In fact, this is what God actually wants us to do.
Oh, wow. Why are we forbidden? Why is this whole thing forbidden then, William? Why the forbidden aspect? Why is this suppressed?
In my opinion, it's got to be, I don't think it's God's desire that this be forbidden. I think this is something that humanity has done to itself.
A group of middlemen, perhaps.
Group of middlemen who step in and say, oh, well, wait a minute. You know, if Enoch can do it on his own, he doesn't need the temple priests anymore.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing today. You know, if individuals can make the direct connect, then we don't need 30,000 Christian churches in America.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all that just goes away.
A patriarchal control system has stepped in then. And
but, you know, it could be a benevolent thing too, James, because, you know, some of this knowledge has been sought, of course, by less than pure-hearted people who seek this knowledge of transformation, not for the power of love, but for the love of power. And so this could be kind of like a literary gargoyle that says, God forbids you to do this. And for a lot of people, that's a barking dog that keeps you from ever pursuing these mystic secrets. But for others, you know, they bring a cookie and throw it at the barking dog and he's distracted and they just pass on by. And now they go into the innermost sanctum of the temple and now they're insiders. And so I think that's an aspect of this too, is that it's up to us to decide, hey, we're going to leave the cheerers and jeerers behind, and we're going to go into the inner sanctum of the temple, and we're going to find that peace. And we know we're going to have to navigate our way through this labyrinth, but ultimately, if we can get into that holy place, it's possible that humans can become advanced celestial beings, or what we think of as angelic beings, just awaken the power within us.
Mm-hmm. So we have God sending a cataclysm to destroy them and their offspring, William. Is this the flood we're talking about, or?
Many people believe that flood of around 10,000 BC, that cataclysm of 10,000 BC, is the cataclysm that destroyed the Watchers. And as Sitchin has remarked and others, it appears that cataclysm, that it was preventable, perhaps, that it was in fact an intentional cataclysm. I don't know for sure, but what I do know is that after this cataclysm, we do have the return of the Watchers. They never left. And you have these various traditions, various mystery schools that started teaching the secrets of the Watchers. And these ultimately found their fullest manifestation or blossoming in the 200-year period before the arrival of Jesus. These teachings are called Merkaba teachings, and they're ultimately sourced with the Anunnaki. And what they are the ascension secrets of the Watchers that deal with how to transform the human body into light so that then we can travel the stars as a celestial being.
You know, I always find the Nephilim are somewhat demonized as the baddies are, and in the same way the serpent is demonized as well, you know, to seek knowledge or to, you know, like these guys seem to have just been given knowledge and information and for the benefit of mankind, and they got punished for it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a part of the literary gargoyle once again, that when you talk about the serpent of wisdom, you know, people suddenly have been conditioned or programmed or taught to fear the wisdom of the serpent, when in reality what I feel we want to do is actually embrace that knowledge. I mean, when you're talking about the serpent of the Garden of Eden, for example, that's considered to be one of these bright snakes, one of these watcher angels that are referred to as seraphim angels, the highest order of angels. They're called the winged serpents. Mm-hmm. And they are, in my view, type 3 beings on the Kardashev scale of civilizations. They have advanced non-physical luminescent rainbow bodies of light, and they have the capability of phasing between their immaterial light body into the material world. And when they're in their material form, they can shapeshift. They can take a human form. They can look like a reptilian. They can have a rainbow image. They can take on any kind of persona that they want.
Wow. William, we seem to have, from the Enochian Bible, Genesis, talking about the Nephilim, and then we have the Anunnaki of Sumerian. There seems to be some sort of a woven link between all this.
Well, there is, because what you've got is a layer cake. I mean, you go back to Babylon, and you go back to the stairways to heaven that were constructed 2200 BC in Egypt, and also in Babylon. You have the descent of celestial beings, call it Shamash, call these beings Ptah, whatever. And ultimately you have these stairways to heaven being destroyed or rendered inoperable. Then later civilization moves on, and you have recreations of this technology. And so when you looked at a place like Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem at the time of Jesus, it's an example of one of these portal or gateway sites that is modeled after earlier temples. And they're all considered to be portals or gateways. You've got beings coming and going. You've got humans going to these temples and learning the secrets of transformation and ascension, so that the human can purify themselves and become like the gods, and in fact join the gods in the divine council or the celestial realms, whatever you want to think about it. Mm-hmm. And it's important for us. We should recognize as well that we need to get a handle on what went on at the Temple of Solomon at the time of Jesus and at the earlier temples upon which it's modeled upon, because there are people today that believe that we're going to be seeing the recreation of Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. In fact, there are people right now, Jewish figures, that are trying to assemble the various pieces of Solomon's Temple. And we talked about Isis a moment ago. Mm-hmm. They're also part of this prophecy of reclaiming these ancient devices and tools that were present at that temple. So we've got to get a handle on what was the Temple of Solomon, and if it's going to be recreated today, who's going to do it, and can we in fact make it happen?
When you talked about Sion, where is Sion? Sion is a Stargate. Is it a galactic Stargate? Is it a place where these souls, light bodies originate?
It is. And where is it exactly located? I don't know. If you ask a Mormon that question, some of them will tell you that at least what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints teaches is that Sion is at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Wow. That God's home planet is at a place called Kolob, and that is where you find Sion, the throne of God. And the Mormons teach that the city of Enoch once existed near Salt Lake City I just forgot the name of the state where Salt Lake City is. Utah, excuse me. So sorry. Just blanked out there. But they believe that the city of Enoch once existed in Utah, and that the entire city, the citizens achieved perfection and were raised or translated to Kolob or Sion and still dwell there. In fact, Sion was the name of the city, and that they will one day return. So when you look at it from that perspective, then you're questioning, is it possible that Sion is actually somewhere near the galactic center? This then brings in the Mayan beliefs about the center of the Milky Way galaxy, other ancient traditions that focus on the galactic center as the place where our souls came from. Mm-hmm. So my answer is, I don't know if that's Sion or not, but it's a good possibility.
You know, I heard somebody talk recently that, okay, let's talk the Dendera zodiac, for example. Whoever invented the zodiac knew the four main fixed points of the zodiac, and they needed at least knowledge or the technology equal to our own to know those four fixed points, because those four stars can only be seen through gas clouds. Do you think that these ancients were given this knowledge by people like the Nephilim or the Watchers? Do you think that it was actually a given technology that they were advanced too in their own way, but they were advanced because the knowledge was given?
That's just an awesome question, and I can't say for sure. What I do know is that temples like Dendera, Esna, Philae, were part of a collection of temples that included the Temple of Solomon that were controlled by the Ptolemies. These, of course, are the successors of Alexander the Great. They're the guys that built the Library of Alexandria, which is supposed to have contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls, some of them even dating to the pre-flood world, and are reputed to possess the answers to questions like who built the pyramids, where do we come from, all these sorts of things. So perhaps a more direct answer to where they got this knowledge could be from the accumulated texts that they placed in the Library of Alexandria. Sure. And when you go to Dendera in particular, this is an extraordinary temple, brand new at the time of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, built by the Ptolemies around 150 BC. Spectacular temple. You walk in, and the first thing you're greeted when you look up is that you see this astronomical ceiling that shows the celestial beings traveling the stars on what they call the Ark of the Millions of Years, the ship of eternity. And what I'm credited with observing is that the way the Ptolemies portrayed the ship of eternity, the Ark of the Millions of Years, the depiction of it, the shape of it, is exactly the same as the way modern science portrays a wormhole.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is on your website, Henry, William, williamhenry.net. I was looking at this today. This is an incredible observation, William. I really credit you for that for sure.
So here we go. I mean, this is knowledge we possess today, just like the four fixed stars. And so you have to ask, what did they really know? And why were the Ptolemies so obsessed with acquiring this knowledge and rebuilding this collection of temples that have this extraordinary Stargate symbolism?
Wow. Of course, you have a tour coming up this year in Egypt in November. Tell us a little bit about that. And we have some interesting discoveries in Egypt to talk about as well, William. I wanted to get a mention.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are going back to Egypt in November and can't wait. We usually go twice a year. We like to go in the fall because the weather's so spectacular. The crowds are down right now, and that means it's the best time to be in Egypt to really get a chance to explore these temples on a more direct and personal basis. We do real luxury tours. We found that, let me just say, a lot of people do tours of Egypt, and what I found was it's just kind of alarming, not in a way, is that a lot of the hosts of these tours, they're not as involved in the planning and the execution of the tours as perhaps they should be. They're kind of along for the ride. But my wife Claire and I decided, look, we really want to take a real hands-on approach to this. So we plan the tours, we organize them. We're part of the team of the guides on the tour. We do lectures throughout, and we're there as not just as hosts, but also there to guide you into these places so that you can have the most amazing experience of your life.
Wonderful. Tell us about some of the recent discoveries there, William.
Well, you've got a couple of things going on there. You've got one of a variation of the tomb of Osiris was discovered in Luxor in the tomb of the nobles. This is similar to what was found by J.J. Hertog on the Giza Plateau, where you've got what the so-called tomb of Osiris on the plateau. It goes 90 feet underneath the surface there and opens into these phenomenal chambers. So that's a powerful discovery. But the one I'm really excited about is the discovery of the causeway to the Great Pyramid.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some of the most magical times I've had on the Giza Plateau are walking the causeway from the Sphinx and Valley Temple up to the second pyramid. It's the most, I don't know, magnificent, almost initiatory promenade that you can make. I mean, it's just really connects you to the place. And archaeologists have wondered, well, where's the causeway going up to the Pyramid of Khufu, which is the biggest of the three pyramids? Well, just a few weeks ago, you have a guy in the village El Haranea near the Giza Plateau. He's digging underneath his house, 33 feet beneath his house, and lo and behold, he finds evidence of the causeway going up to the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
So
33 feet. That's quite deep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listeners who have been to the village know what it's like there. It's pretty chaotic, and you've got all these homes. You got the Pizza Hut and the Kentucky Fried Chicken across from the Sphinx, and underneath all of that are these tunnel systems that have been discussed by archaeologists and historians like Herodotus, who claimed that he visited these passages and that it was enclosed and covered with reliefs. You've got Edgar Cayce and other visionaries talking about tunnels underneath the Sphinx leading up to the Great Pyramid, because after all, it's thought that the Sphinx itself was the gateway or entranceway to the Great Pyramid, which of course would have been sealed in the ancient times, sealed with that shiny Tura limestone, and it would have been like a mirror. There was no way in from the outside, unless you knew perhaps a secret entrance up top or elsewhere. But it's thought that the actual entrance was from underneath. And so here we now have evidence of this causeway. So it feels like as it has for the past decade or two, that just starting to give up her secrets. And I, for one, am on the edge of my seat. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Wow. As an investigative mythologist, do you think then that the mythology that's incorporated in Egypt is fact? I mean, we say mythology today. I find that kind of derogatory, William, because it's like, it's their history, but to us it's our mythology because we just don't understand it. Do you think it's the lack of understanding?
Yeah, it's a lack of understanding, a lack of consciousness. I mean, I'm a big subscriber to the belief that whoever it was that created these incredible temples, the Valley Temple with the granite blocks, the Great Pyramid, the Osirian, and the real ancient temples of Egypt, going back to the first dynasty and maybe even before the pre-flood stuff, they had a different consciousness than we have. They seem to be operating on another level, and that's kind of the challenge and the hope really of Egypt, is that if we can sharpen our minds and return to that consciousness, it's going to profoundly change our world, because you're talking about the discovery of free energy devices. You're talking about the rediscovery of a spiritual consciousness and our evolution beyond this kind of sort of robotic existence we seem to want to be placing ourselves in.
You know, I've been to Egypt 4 times, William. I just can't get enough of the place. It's intoxicating in an intellectual way. But the last time I managed to get to the Serapeum, because that wasn't open the last few times I was there. What an incredible place. I mean, I'm looking at these granite boxes that are fashioned to such a high degree of accuracy. Tell me this is not an intelligent race doing this, please. Like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean, I love the perspective that those granite boxes, which are massive, are some kind of like portals or gateways, you know, flesh eaters. It feels like you're in an airport when you're in the Serapeum, to me. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. And then when you put it in the context of Saqqara as a resurrection mystery school that had been in continuous operation for 3,000 years, you're recognizing that you've placed yourself in a point of contact with some extraordinary beings. And my wife has had experiences at Saqqara connecting with Ptah. Other people on tours have connected deeply in the dream state with beings at Saqqara. And it suggests to me that, the place is still active. Yeah. And that's what makes it so, as you say, intoxicating to go there and addictive. I can't wait to go back.
Yeah. What a fascinating place. You know, I think everybody, like you say, when you could look at ancient Egypt and learn something from it, just look at the race and say, look, these guys could do this technologically in a physical, technological sense. They could do this with granite. They could move these stones. They could build these monuments. High mathematics. You know, they didn't do that because they were just technologically advanced. They had to be spiritually advanced alongside it, I think.
I agree. And I'm always emphasizing that on our tours. You talk about the Giza pyramid as a power plant, and you see the Jed columns all over the place, and you recognize that what they seem to be doing, I mean, they obviously weren't, to me, using the power that they were generating for iPhones and iMacs and all that kind of thing. So they must have had a spiritual purpose for the generation of this power. And it seemed to me that it was all about infusing their culture with that vibration that keeps us, one, connected to to the land, and at the same time connected with the cosmos as well. And that's something that we're losing right now. I mean, I just read an article the other day about how with all the urban light pollution, that we're going to lose sight of the Milky Way galaxy itself. I mean, that's our great cosmic mother, and here we are risking just losing that connection of people not even knowing where they came from.
For sure. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Give us out your website one more time and give us the title of your latest book on the Watchers.
My website is williamhenry.net, and my book on the Watchers is called Lost Secrets of the Watchers, Ascension, Resurrection, and Perfection.
Wow. William, I really thank you for your time today. Such an interesting guy, such a prolific researcher. I wish you every success for the tours this year, and I hope we're going to do a Capricorn TV interview in London when I get you over here.
I will look very much forward to that, James. Thank you. Next level of manifestation, and these teachings that will help us do that are out there and available.
Oh, wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about Ancient Aliens first, I suppose. I mean, what a successful... how many seasons is it? 7 now?
7 seasons and getting ready to go into the 8th season.
Wow. And you've been on quite a few episodes, if not a majority. You're one of the main players there, William.
I've been in, the past 4 years, I've been in every episode as far as I can tell. I started with one of my bits of research having to do with the U.S. Capitol. They did a segment on that. I went up to Washington, D.C. and walked around the Capitol with them and showed them some things. And after that, I became more of a regular talking head on the show, and that evolved into providing research and stories for the show. They've probably done 8 or 10 episodes based on articles from my website or my books and other materials.
Mm-hmm. What is it about Ancient Aliens that's captivated the audience and captivated the attention of the public?
Initially, I think it was their open-endedness. They asked questions as opposed to going at it strictly documentary style and trying to hammer in a point of view. Plus, they gave the presenters the opportunity to view or voice their research without fear of somebody playing the old wolf in sheep's clothing game. I mean, many of the presenters on the show, including myself, had sat down and done interviews for some of the major channels, and they'll very often send Goldilocks or this really nice presenter to ask you the questions. Meanwhile, the wolf is sitting back at the studio smacking his lips saying, "I can't wait to get a hold of what I just had this guy say." And so there was a real trust factor there for presenters where they simply didn't want to play ball with some of these folks. But Ancient Aliens said, "Hey, let's rip the lid off. Let's just go for it here, and let's take people on a journey and let them decide for themselves how far they want to stretch this." Yeah,
for sure. Wow, it is such a wonderful subject. I mean, whether you're from the archaeological crowd or the historical crowd or the spiritual crowd or,
spectrum of consciousness out there and spectrum of energies, we occupy a very, very narrow spectrum. And the idea is that we can transform our physical body by accelerating the frequency of the body. According to the Tibetans, we can spin our body into a vortex of energy that ultimately manifests as 5-colored rainbow light, or what they call the rainbow body of light, leaving behind only hair, toe, and fingernails, which have no nerves to be transmuted. Mm-hmm. This is the Tibetan teaching. And what I've done is I've found this very same teaching in ancient Egyptian resurrection mysteries and in Christian resurrection mysteries. They all seem to be talking about this same capability that we have of morphing the body, dissolving the body into its next form. And the advantage of that is that it is in this form, this light body form, that we will then be able to travel the cosmos. It seems that there is a barrier separating flesh and blood from the cosmos. Even the Bible says that flesh and blood can't inherit the kingdom of heaven. And that suggests to many people that we're going to have to change our form in order to get past this perceived boundary and travel the stars. And I think that's where we're at right now, is we're starting to maybe perhaps recognize there could well be a glass ceiling that's keeping us solar system bound. I mean, we're starting to make efforts to develop our own warp craft. Johnson Space Center has the 100-year Starship program down at their Eagle Works lab, where they're saying within 100 years we're going to have a warp craft and be able to travel from here to Alpha Centauri in less than 2 weeks, a journey that right now would take 75,000 years in a spaceship or starship.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, unless we start getting serious about our technology with the concerted efforts for space travel, we ain't going anywhere. I know that.
Well, my sense is that when you look at I have an article on this on my website, williamhenry.net, about the 100-year Starship program and the symbolism that they use to first of all represent their project, the eagle going through, or a warp craft going through a wormhole with an eagle attached to it. You find similar imagery, an eagle or a bird, an open gateway, in ancient Sumerian cylinder seals and Babylonian cylinder seals. And these cartoons are all telling the same story. Humankind has the ability to open these gateways and travel the cosmos. But what the ancients kept emphasizing to me was that, and the message I would give to Johnson Space Center is that in order to kick in that warp drive, we're first going to have to kick in the spiritual drive. Mm-hmm. And there's a consciousness component to this. It's going to require a transformation of the human body into another form, not of flesh and blood form, in order for us to travel the stars. At least that's the contention of the ancients.
This is quite powerful what we're talking about. This is amazing for me to just even have a discussion about this. When you think of the possibilities of what this is everything to us as a civilization. This is where we need to go.
Well, you're right. I mean, the doomsday clock is at 3 minutes to midnight right now. It was just pushed forward. It was pushed forward because of climate change, because of IT security concerns, mm-hmm. because of nuclear proliferation, and now they've added artificial intelligence. Those are the key factors that could lead to our extinction within not decades, but years. This is why they pushed the doomsday clock forward. So this is compelling us to say, hey, we got to get our act together. If we've got these factors that could lead to some kind of an extinction level event, we've got to do something about this. And that means, to me, we've got to start taking a more spiritual approach to our life and our approach to humanity in general.
I know you talk about this singularity clock. Maybe you could just explain that one for us, please, William.
Well, what is happening is that there's this rapid acceleration of technology where suddenly we have governments, U.S. government, and its secretive advanced research projects agencies and others promoting a new version of humanity, a smart human, a smart digital person. And what this means is the smart person's going to have implanted chips. The smart person's going to have a new skin that is presently under development for humanity that has all the computer and digital technology enmeshed or embedded.
It seems to bind everything together. I mean, let's talk about some of your work. I'm going to get into the Watchers. I'll save that for a moment, your latest book. But, the Anunnaki, you've researched this. The ancient Egypt, you're a big player there with research too, William. I mean, what's your opinion of the ancient alien hypothesis that we had flesh and blood aliens coming here, maybe interdimensional as well?
Yeah, I think we've had here in the States, we have a ketchup called Heinz 57 or 57 varieties. And I think that's what we've got in the ancient alien scenario. You've got everything from the beings who are just only maybe 100 years in advance of where we're at right now, mm-hmm. putting around the cosmos, perhaps in warp drive, warp craft. Then you've got the super advanced beings who have gone completely organic. They're post-biological. They travel the stars in stargates, wormholes. They have the ability to take on physical manifestation at will and then morph back into their light body form also at will. So it's across the board, really. And if you're into heavy stones, there's some real heavy lifting you can do in this research, going back and figuring out how did they build the pyramids? How did they move those 500 and 600 ton red granite blocks into places if they're moving around Lego blocks? Mm-hmm. You can also find the stories of them performing superhuman feats and morphing into light beings. And this is what makes it so exciting. And ultimately, to me, it's all about answering the question of who are we? What are we doing here? And ultimately, how do we leave? And where do we go when it's our time to leave?
I think you're right. I think there's this kind of technical, advanced, high-tech science that these guys had, and inevitably leads you into this supernatural element where the light body. These guys were angelic in a sense, and maybe we could talk a little bit about that for a moment, William. What is the light
Sure.
body? What is the light energy? What is it made of? How does it work? How does it function? What's the benefit of this to see this, to know this?
Well, here's the idea. You have this vast spectrum.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your faithful host, James, and I'm delighted to have a new guest today, Mr. William Henry. William's been on the cards for a show for a time now, and sorry I didn't get to get in touch with William last year. There was a few things I wanted to talk about, but I have him here today, start of the new year. Really excited about today's guest. What an enigmatic researcher and author he is. Internationally renowned as an investigative mythologist, famed for the Ancient Aliens TV show as well, making great appearances regularly on that. He's authored some 16 books now, numerous DVD programs. So much diverse research. William's into ancient Egypt, Ark of the Covenant, spirituality, ascension. Like I learned today, the Turin Shroud, which we're going to mention as well. And his latest book, The Watchers. We're going to get into that as well. Stargates. I mean, this guy has it all. And what a prolific research he does. This guy knows his stuff. So without further ado, let's bring on today's guest. Hi, William. Welcome to the show.
Hi, James. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here finally, William. And so many people have referred me to do the show, and you have been on the cards, but I have you here now. William, you've got quite a diverse background in research. I guess the core body or reason for what you do, I refer to say, is spiritual seeking, spiritual attainment, transformation, ascension. It's all down to spirituality with you, William. Is that correct?
It is. I started researching heavily in the ancient alien, ancient astronaut area back in 1991, and it became very clear right off the bat that very often when you would hear or read these tales of extraterrestrial beings or celestial beings coming to Earth and influencing human affairs, that they seem to have an agenda. And to me, that agenda focused on transferring sacred knowledge, spiritual knowledge about human transformation into celestial beings. So very early on, I started on this path or track of following the mystery traditions that tell us, hey, we're in a cocoon type form here, a pupal phase, and we're all in the process here of morphing into our